In May of 1967, Egypt's president, Gamal Abdel Nasser, declared war on the State of Israel, telling his followers, "Our path to Palestine will be covered with blood." Nasser moved his troops into the Sinai Peninsula, expelled the UN peacekeepers there, then blocked the Straits of Tiran to Israeli ships. For Israel, it was time to strike or be struck. And for the next 3 weeks, the Israel Defense Forces were on high alert.
The atmosphere in Israel before the war was very tense. People thought we were facing total extinction. 40,000 coffins were prepared, and no one was sure that the IDF could really handle the Arab armies. 2 weeks after the birth of my son, I had to leave him, without knowing if I would ever see him again.
Armed by the Soviet Union, the Egyptians had the largest and best air force in the Arab world. Israel's only chance of survival was a preemptive strike. And the Air Force had prepared for this moment for more than a decade. Their plan was called Operation Moked, which means focus in Hebrew.
Operation Moked was the brainchild of Ezra Weitzman. He was commander of the Israeli Air Force. He was a pilot himself. He was a pilot in the British Air Force in World War II, flew Spitfires, later the president of Israel. And it was an incredibly daring program.
The plan was for dozens of squadrons to strike 11 airfields throughout Egypt and the Sinai Peninsula.
The main goal was to strike when all the Arab planes were still on the ground, fully exposed. And the idea was to bomb out the runways first to prevent any aircraft from taking off and to keep them from flying for a few days.
In 1966, the plan's creator, Ezra Weitzman, had been promoted to IDF Chief of Operations, and his successor, General Moti Hod, now had the task of executing Weitzman's plan.
Moti was a commander of the Air Force that kept on flying as a fighter. He understood what we felt in the cockpit. So he understood the issues. Brave man, the nicest person in the world. He had nerves from a metal and always thinking forward, ahead, like he did on the time to attack Egypt.
For Israeli civilians, the pre-war tension was high. But for Air Force Squadron Commander Yalo Shavit, Israel's victory was inevitable.
The Israeli Air Force is like a tide spring, ready to somebody to cut the cable that prevents it from. It will be done in no time because we have been trained since the last 11 years. I told my wife, go to Gedera. Gedera is a small village in the south. Find a small toferet, a lady tailor. And you know, what do you want to wear for parties with all the who's and who's, prime minister and down? Have 3 sets. Why 3? I said, because I'm telling you to do 3. There will be parties. He says, you're crazy. I said, listen to me, go and do it. She did it. She was the best woman dressed in the parties.
Israeli intelligence had spent years gathering details about the Egyptian targets. From the location of each plane to the name, rank, and even the voice of each pilot.
I was one of the youngest pilots in the Air Force. I had graduated from pilot training the year before the war. I wasn't even 21 years old yet. I was the intelligence officer of the squadron. For 3 weeks, we learned the most accurate intelligence we could learn. We also prepared the combat doctrine for attacking airports. I was a part of that system.
It was so confident that they know exactly what to do. They trained so many times, they knew it with closed eyes. To receive an aircraft with empty fuel tanks, with empty munition, with empty whatever, And they got to a record of 8 minutes. 8 minutes to prepare the aircraft to be ready to take off.
Monday morning, the 5th of June, they woke us up and we went down to the base. We knew that the big moment had arrived. The commander of the Air Force came in with the wing commander, and they said, "Dear friends, Operation Focus will start today at 7:45 a.m. sharp. This is a fateful operation. Friends of yours will be injured and killed in battle right next to you. It is going to be tough, but we will make it." Then the wing commander told us that the fate of the Jewish people was on our shoulders. We were not afraid for ourselves. The only fear was that we would not be able to perform our duties in the best way possible.
When I took off, I didn't realize it will be such a complicated mission.
Squadron leaders gave their pilots some ground rules, issued by Commander Moti Hod.
There is no communication whatsoever. No radio, no nothing. So we were prepared with all kind of signs and flags, colors of the flags. When you're ready to start the engine, where you have to take off, no radio, zero. You fly at 0 altitude, the lowest you can. If something happened, you do not report back that you crashed or that you jumped. The Air Force will find you. You do whatever it takes to reach to the target. We have to destroy the aircrafts on the ground.
We were also told that the mission was more important than anything, and that even in an emergency, even if a friend of ours is about to be killed, we were not allowed to warn him. We had to just let him crash. As cruel as that may sound, this was also that we will not disrupt the operation. If someone is attacked, you have to go on and fight.
Nearly all of Israel's 196 combat planes were committed to the airstrike. Only 12 were left behind to defend the state of Israel. The planes flew low over the Mediterranean to avoid being detected by radar.
We took off and stayed between 35 feet to 50 feet. Impossible below that. We smelled the smell of the salt over the sea.
I was assigned to the foursome that was under Yallow's leadership. I was number 2 in the squadron, and our mission was to attack the Ensash field near Cairo.
Egypt's radar didn't pick them up, but someone else did. At 8:15 Egyptian time, Jordanian radar screens lit up with an unusual concentration of planes heading over the Mediterranean. And from there, a series of mistakes gave the Israelis an overwhelming advantage. The top general in Jordan radioed the word grape, the prearranged code for war, to Egypt's defense minister in Cairo. But the Egyptians had changed the code word the day before without updating Jordan. So, the Jordanians' messages were tossed aside, and the warning never reached Cairo. But even if the message had been deciphered, there was no one around to read it. Egypt's Air Force commander was at his daughter's wedding. The ground force commander was on vacation. And the defense minister had gone to bed a few hours earlier, leaving orders that he was not to be disturbed. Egypt's chief of staff, Field Marshal Amer, was flying in that morning from an all-night party. So, at the first sign of trouble, the Egyptians shut down their entire air defense system, worried that Amer's plane might be shot down by mistake. Assuming that any Israeli attack would begin at sunrise, the Egyptians had already flown their dawn patrols and returned to base for breakfast.
Moti was the man that planned it, caused the soldiers and officers to be creative. He hit them exactly in the middle of landing, refueling, eating, ready to go. Here, boom. We reached the target, but from a distance of 3-4 minutes, I saw that there was a fog. So I started circling, finding a hole in this fog that I see the runway. I dive, I bomb the runway, everything was okay. 2 is okay. 3, I don't hear anything. 4 is okay. Something happened to this excellent officer and pilot that he tried to aim, and meantime, he lost altitude. And when he tried to recover, he hit the runway. But as we were told in the briefing before the takeoff, there is no mercy, there is only one thing: keep on doing the job.
We turned around 360 degrees and performed the second attack. The planes were already burning and there was a lot of smoke. Those bombers went up in giant flames. First I attacked a bomber that seemed to be less damaged. Then the second time I attacked an anti-aircraft battery, and then finally the control tower. The Egyptians fired some anti-aircraft missiles at my plane, but they did not hit me.
In the last second, I saw from the left anti-aircraft position, and before I knew what happened, I got a hit by 3-4 bullets. The front wheel, I saw it disappear. The aircraft stopped, my air brakes went out, and from 500 knots, it went down to 220 in no time. The two other, number 2 and 4, flew forward. I gave them an order: go by yourself to the base. Get as soon as possible to the sea, so nobody will shoot at you. So I found myself, after I was hit, at 3,000 foot, looking forward. And what do I see? MiG-21 in front of me, maybe 500 meters, shooting. My instinct immediately is to shoot at him. He broke to the right, I broke to the left, and then close to Israel, I went up to 7,000 in case I bail out. I came to the area of the base. Benny Pellet, the commander of the base, in the control tower. Hello, you have a problem, I understand. Go to the sea next to Ashdod and bail out. He says, no. He says, I'm telling you. I says, I hear you, but I know I'm not going to bail out. I said, don't worry. I will land on 1/3 of the runway toward the fence. So I came there. I hold the aircraft in the lowest speed I can, and I crossed the runway. I touched, full brakes. I saw a lot of pieces of fire from both sides. I crossed the runway. I went to the overrun, a lot of stones and all this, and it stopped. And I went out, and I was standing, and I saw the security and the emergency cars. And they were so excited. Where's the pilot? Because they thought that something happened because of the dust and all this. There was no fire because there was no fuel. I came with 0 fuel. 0 fuel. Nothing in the aircraft, in the tanks. Nothing.
Gradually, the rest of the first wave returned to Israel. In less than 8 minutes, the planes were refueled, rearmed, and ready for a second wave of bombing. In just over half an hour, the Egyptians had lost 204 planes, half of their air force. The Israelis had lost only 19. The kill ratio of Operation Focus had exceeded expectations by almost 100%. At 10:30, General Moti Hod turned to the Army's Chief of Staff, Yitzhak Rabin, and announced, "The Egyptian Air Force has ceased to exist." The Jordanian and Syrian air forces had also been decimated. After less than 5 hours, the Israelis had complete air superiority over the Middle East.
It is truly a Hail Mary operation, but for the Egyptians, it's the ultimate humiliation. And very shortly after the Israeli aerial strike, Israeli ground forces began moving into Sinai. The goals were very limited, very limited. The Egyptians had 3 defense lines in Sinai. The goal was to take out the first of the 3 defense lines, not beyond that. But the Egyptian army collapsed so fast and began running away that the other defense lines crashed. And then, as I said earlier, Israeli forces reached the Suez Canal without even intending to reach the Suez Canal. They got sucked into Sinai. So for the Egyptians, this was the ultimate humiliation. It cannot be that the people who just yesterday you had pledged to throw into the sea are now driving you across the Suez Canal.
All day long, the Egyptian propaganda machine ran in overdrive. Radio Cairo falsely reported that Egypt had shot down 85 Israeli planes, while only losing 2 of their own. And Field Marshal Amer told the Jordanians that Israel had lost 75% of its air power, a lie that encouraged Jordan's King Hussein to enter the war.
So you have to develop a big lie. And the lie is that just the opposite has happened, that the Egyptian Air Force has surprised the Israeli Air Force on the ground and destroyed the Israeli Air Force, that the Egyptian army has crossed the border into Israel and is on the outskirts of Tel Aviv. That's the big lie. And this big lie is believed by 200 million Arabs. No one questions, the credibility, no one questions the veracity of these claims. And, there's a certain debate about the degree to which Nasser himself understood or was informed of the direness of the situation. How would you like to be the officer who walked in and said, President Nasser, I got some bad news for you? How would you like to be that person? So maybe people were feeding him strange information. There was one document I saw in Egypt was that the person who reported the Egyptian victory over the Israeli Air Force was a young Air Force captain by the name of Hosni Mubarak.
Operation Focus remains one of the most successful air campaigns in military history. During the Six-Day War, the Israeli Air Force destroyed 452 enemy planes, while losing just 46 of their own. After their stunning performance in Egypt, Yalo Shavit and his crew finished the day in Jerusalem, bombing the Jordanian tanks that raced towards the city and providing air cover for Israeli ground forces.
It was a long day. That night, I came back to the room alone because my roommate got killed that day. It was an exhausting day, both physically and mentally. Not all was taken for granted, even with the feeling of victory we had. No one was free to celebrate.
When I think about it now, after years of experience, I still think that this was a very successful mission.
If one will ask me what was the thing which made it possible so successful, I would answer it in one word: simplicity. I know that there is a lot of stories about secret weapons which we used, but we didn't actually. We used the spirit, we used the standard of flying, and we used another thing which maybe doesn't exist in any other air forces in the world, and we call it the no alternative. And when you don't have alternatives, you can achieve such achievements as we did in this war.
They don't know what a group of dedicated people, professionals, trained, willing to invest their soul and everything they have can do for a country.
The amazing story of the Six-Day War, it's an incredible achievement for that Air Force, for the IDF. And CBN's docudrama, In Our Hands, it tells the rest of the story behind the Six-Day War and focuses on the battle for Jerusalem. You can see it on DVD or in streaming in 4K. It's yours for a gift of any dollar amount. All you have to do is go to cbn.com/inourhands, or you can call us, 1-800-700-7000. That was one of the DVD extras on that, but you get to see the battle for Jerusalem. If you like it, it's called In Our Hands, and it's yours for a gift of any dollar amount. Just call us, 1-800-700-7000.